Hi there, welcome to the eCommerce Nurse podcast, our 35th episode. I'm Karina McLeod, ex-Amazonian and CEO and founder of eCommerce Nurse and Vendor Society. Today we're going to be talking about using Amazon Marketing Cloud to maximize advertising performance. We have a special guest, Srinath Reddy, founder and CEO of Intentwise. Intentwise's technology platform empowers mid to large brands, sellers, and agencies with data analytics infrastructure and advertising optimization capabilities for Amazon, Instacart, Target, Walmart, and more. So hi, Srinath, a big thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me, Karina. Good to be here.
I always feel like when I give a bio, I've sort of sold the Intentwise part, but I've really missed out your background, and especially your background when it comes to data. So do you want to start off and share with our listeners a bit more about your experience in data and why you're here today?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity. In the way of introduction, before starting Intentwise, I spent 10, 15 years in the world of data and performance marketing. More specifically, I used to be at Orbitz, the online travel company, which then got bought by Expedia. So I ran our data and analytics teams there. And then I moved on to run our performance marketing team as my current co-founder took on the data team. So together, we have battle scars of building data infrastructure to support a site that we used to get 25 to 30 million unique visitors per month. So we tracked every impression, every click, and used that in performance marketing. So that's been our background. And frankly, you build businesses and the founder DNA starts to reflect on where you end up at. And that's kind of what has happened with Intentwise. So we've always been data and analytics centric. I can certainly speak to a lot of things around data, including machine learning and AI, because I have lived in that world for quite some time. And I'll end by saying the Amazon journey has been kind of a place to bring it all together: data, analytics, algorithms, product, to be part of this fast-growing advertising and analytics ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. And you say fast growing, Amazon definitely is, and it's constantly evolving, which is, I guess, is why we want to talk about the Amazon Marketing Cloud, because this has come up quite a bit recently. And it is kind of one of those unknown, as in what really is the Amazon Marketing Cloud? Why should we know about it? What can we do with it? And so I know when we initially spoke, you've written some articles on it and you have that knowledge of it. So if you want to share with our listeners, I'd love to hear about, just the basics. What is Amazon Marketing Cloud?
Yeah, so AMC, as it's fondly called these days, just to give a little bit of background, right? If you have been doing sponsored ads on Amazon, right? A lot of the data we get has been what I'd like to call last click attributed, and at best, a daily grain of data, right? So what I mean by that is, as a consumer or a shopper, I could have touched 3 different campaigns of yours, but it's that last campaign that I touched that gets all the credit from a revenue perspective. So that's the world we lived in, right? And then came along Amazon Marketing Stream, where what that changed is it took the grain from daily to hourly, right? And now Amazon Marketing Cloud is, in simple terms, you can think of it as they're tracking every impression that a shopper is exposed to from an ad perspective, every event, so impression, clicks, conversions, and they are tracking it at an individual user level. It's actually, the field is called user ID. So imagine you, Karina, got exposed to campaign A, campaign B, campaign C, campaign D, and then you bought some stuff, right? You could actually string together the entire pattern. And you can choose to decide how much credit you want to give to each of these campaigns. Okay. And when I say campaigns, it isn't just search campaigns. You could have touched DSP. You could have then touched search, right? So across all those interactions, it is the underlying raw grain of data that captures every event and at a really fine grain. And that is what Amazon Marketing Cloud is. And it isn't just the Amazon-centric data. As a brand, you could, import your first-party data into it. And if you have attended Unbox, their Amazon Marketing Cloud is going a direction where Amazon is going to include third-party data from Experian and things like that. But the underlying strategic emphasis and goal for Amazon is to help you, the advertiser, get to much more precise measurement and measurement that you control, not what Amazon dictates as, okay, last click is the only way. You could do multi-click, multi-touch attribution, right? You could give credit to all the campaigns a user has touched. So in simple terms, every exposure, every event at a user level, and by the way, user, for privacy reasons, you can't just look at an individual user, it's all aggregated and stuff. But all these events available to you in a system, and that's what Amazon Marketing Cloud is. You can the only interface today is you need to be able to write SQL. It's called structured query language. That's what you use to query databases. That's the current interface. And I can talk more about all the other things they have done to help improve adoption. But I'll just summarize by saying it's the finest grain of data shoppers are exposed to, and all of it is in your hands. And you can choose to do what you want to do with it. So hopefully that clarifies some piece of this.
Awesome. Yeah, completely. And thank you for simplifying it, because I completely understand it now from you simplifying that, because I, talking, bringing it back to basics really helps me understand. And it's just absolutely incredible as to the amount of data now available, because it was always seen as Amazon were holding this data, and they had almost this power by having so much data available that they're now sharing as well and giving that. And that data is absolutely incredible, because it's something you would never have during years ago in bricks and mortar. None of that data. People used to pay so much money for surveys and to get any idea as to how shoppers behave, yet it's on everybody's doorstep. How does AMC then differ? Because you can get some of this data with the Amazon attribution tool. Is that something completely different?
Oh yeah, so Amazon attribution was designed for tracking performance of off Amazon advertising on Amazon, right? So I could run a Google campaign or a Facebook campaign, traffic comes to Amazon. Google or Facebook never knew what that traffic did on Amazon. Amazon attribution with the right tagging will tell you what that traffic did on Amazon, right? So Amazon attribution has been a way of connecting Amazon performance on Amazon, as well as metrics from wherever that traffic came from together, right? But it's just fundamentally very different, right? So AMC, think of it as shoppers are getting exposed to all kinds of ad formats from Amazon. And it isn't just DSP and search, it's streaming TV across all their assets. So there's just all kinds of interactions. And what they're saying is, I'm going to capture every touch point and all the attributes of it. You go figure out what you want to do. Well, they're also helping in that regard, but they're fundamentally just very different. I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, completely. And I guess there's this thing though, with like loads of data is fantastic, but then it comes to this stage of data paralysis, as in there's so much data. And we even see this with clients. They've got all these reports and they sort of say how great this data is. And when you actually ask them what they're doing with the data, it's almost like it's too much, the overwhelm. So how do you sort of take that data? And I know you mentioned the SQL bit, but how do you almost, when there is so much data, make it usable to be able to apply some element of logic and to help you effectively optimize and grow your business?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, it is actually a question that Amazon thinks about too deeply. I mean, I just came back from Unboxed and met a whole bunch of folks on the AMC team, and together we are going to be doing hopefully a bunch of things to help solve exactly that. There is an insane amount of data. Brands and advertisers may not have the resources, time, to actually make the most of it. I would think about it this way. First of all, Amazon themselves within AMC, there's a whole bunch of example queries. So for example, there is a query that you can run to get path to conversion data, which tells you like, I touched DSP, then I touched sponsored products, and I bought, or I only touched sponsored products and I bought. So you could actually see paths to conversion. There's a pre-baked set of SQL queries that you could run and extract data and do what you want with it. So there is that. Right? The question you framed, Karina, is I think age old, right? I mean, explosion of data is everywhere. It isn't just in Amazon ads, it's everywhere. And how do organizations make the most of it? In my view, I mean, it's a deeper, broader problem. But in my view, there's a few fundamental things that are critical. One is you as an organization have to commit to being good at data. What do I mean by that? Like, by the way, we think about this problem very deeply because, I mean, this is going to be a plug for what we do, but we have a product called Intentwise Analytics Cloud that is going after the exact same thing you're talking about. But I think of it in 3 layers, right? One, collect and own your data first, because if that doesn't exist, there you don't have a data problem, right? You just don't have data. So a lot of brands today do not collect and own their own data, right? And there's all kinds of options to do that quickly and cheaply. I would do that. Second is this emphasis on, do you have the resources to actually analyze that data, right? One is, of course, resource commitment. 2 is the skills of those resources. For instance, we have done SQL training classes for people recently. Now, it's not even a class, it's a free webinar. You could go to our site and under resources, click on SQL training, you just get trained for free. But that's important because I will tell you, any person in a company with SQL skills, I think they have superpowers. Because with that, you could do a whole lot more. And it's not complicated. Like, there's a few things you can learn that gets you 90% of the way. Commit to training the team on SQL and some data skills. I think that's essential. And third, it's also important to have good questions. Okay. Like, I would just go back and ask myself, what are the 3 things, if I knew, that would be game changing for my business? Okay. So a lot of us are in like such, we're so busy running day to day, but stepping back and saying, if I had answers to these 3 to 5 questions, this is a game changer for me. And the context could be anything, an agency context, an aggregator context, a brand. Ask the questions and start working backwards to how to get there. It doesn't have to be pretty charts at the get-go. It could just be someone stitching data together and having a view, and you can make a decision off of that. Right? But I'll say commit to some resourcing, focus on elevating their skill. And by the way, companies like me are also trying to bridge all of that, right? And ultimately, our goal is the fastest path from raw data to insight, right? Own your data. But I think as we step into 2023, just based on what we were just talking about this earlier too, but based on what I saw at Unbox, you're going to have some commitment towards data and analytics strategy, because without that, you're not going to be good at optimization. At least you leave a lot on the table. Long-winded answer, but it is a difficult question. I've seen too many forms of it, but
no, I think that's brilliant. And I think we did a roundtable last month actually on data, and we were talking with vendors and asking them what data they use. And it's incredible that there's so much data available, and vendors aren't even tapping into it. And just looking at the basics. And there's an element where you talk with some brands and they're really hot on data because maybe their business evolved in the digital era. But when you talk to brands that have come from bricks and mortar, it's almost like, how do you translate a lot of that data that's never been data that's needed in the days of bricks and mortar, yet it's so useful, and businesses are not even touching hardly any of that data.
Yeah, and that I think that transition is fundamentally a bit of a challenge, because in the brick and mortar world, I can't think of much data where you worry about hourly grain and like a grain of the minute, right? It's, you have massive amount of data compared to what you're used to. So your current systems probably don't even hold up.
Yeah.
Right? And then back to those, having critical questions, right? If your mind is not opened up to what's possible, how are you going to come up with great questions, right? So so that's a big challenge, to be honest. So that transition actually is hard, but I just think that with the right leadership commitment to it, you can make it happen, you know. But I'm in agreement with you. And I'll just add one more thing, right? If you just watched what has happened in the last 6 to 9, let's say Jan 1st of this year to now, the amount of data Amazon is making available programmatically, like through APIs and such, is just exploded, right? And it's not going to stop based on what I'm seeing, right? So it's almost imperative to just like have a strategy to effectively deal with this. Otherwise, it'll become a handicap from your own value prop perspective, you know.
Exactly. And it's no longer, at the end of the day, data drives results. It drives decisions. Is no longer that emotive response of, no, we just know it worked before. No. It's you can't go on that anymore. It's all about data, and brands from, you know, bricks and mortar. I speak with them. They're very aware that they need to, and it's just exactly what you said. You know, what you mentioned about asking good questions. I think that's brilliant, and I've written this all down because even I could take some real insights into our business here. But it's hard to think about those good questions when it's almost like you almost can't visualize how much the data and where it can take you and how much is really available.
Yeah, and I would actually start in simple terms also, right, Karina? I mean, I always believe that when data is fragmented, just connecting them, you know, magic can happen. Like I'll have simple examples. Your inventory data today is completely fragmented or siloed from your advertising data. If you just pulled a view together at an ASIN level of your inventory level and ad spend, and start getting smart about when do you not spend on ads based on inventory level compared to kind of historic averages, you will not run out of products on shelf faster than you need to, right? That's just simple example. Taking, like, let's say profitability from metrics from net PPM and at a product level, and seeing like, am I putting money on the most profitable items, right? Like, honestly, when I say questions, they don't even have to be like rocket science, right? Just for a moment, assume that ad metrics and retail metrics are all together, beautifully joined. What do you want to know? Right? So I can come up with 10, 15 use cases that are like just quick. You could do that now, but doing those will optimize your ads further. And of course, AMC takes it to the next level. So kind of that's what I mean. Like, it doesn't even have to be fancy questions. It's just, if these siloed data sets were connected, what do you want to know?
It's interesting because the data, actually, if you think of offline, that's all mapped together. It's just done manually. And the difference here is that all the data is there, but because it is so fragmented, it's about how you pull that together. So with that in mind, and with AMC, and I guess this is the start of a very long journey, and a very interesting journey in terms of how that will evolve. How can businesses take advantage of it now? You mentioned the templates and everything, but is there is it something that you can just access, or are we on this really early days at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's early days, but it's also I believe there's a bunch of actionable stuff in there. I mean, the way we think about AMC, we classify the use cases from AMC into, and this is more Intentwise point of view on this, into kind of 5 buckets. The first bucket is the simple one. It's just campaign optimization analytics. And I'll give you kind of a couple of examples, right? If you're spending DSP dollars, you could run an extract or a report or a query that tells you by different exposure frequencies, what is happening to performance, right? So maybe after the 12th exposure, nothing is going on. So that is the parameter you set on your DSP campaign. You set a exposure frequency cap. Okay. You could get very intricate device level performance metrics, which may help you decide like, hey, maybe we go heavy on mobile versus desktop. So there is a bunch of what I'd like to call just tactical campaign optimization use cases, the insights for which are in AMC. To me, that's low-hanging fruit. That's the first thing I would do. Okay. The other thing you could do is just slicing and dicing audience data and just fine-tuning the audiences you're going after in your DSP campaigns. Right? That's another thing AMC lets you do, which is discovery of like additional audiences. Again, something that you can analyze and act on fairly quickly. You can, so we call it audience analytics. That's line item number 2. And then we could kind of start to get more sophisticated. So multi-touch analytics is what we call it. You can construct a view that basically gives you paths, right? Like, hey, the path of campaign A, B, C resulted in this. Right? One of the things that does is it lets you can set up your own attribution model. You can say, I'm going to give equal credit to each of these campaigns. And so you may be running a sponsored display campaign where A cost is terrible. And, let's say revenue is $1,000. But you realize that sponsored display campaign is something people touch quite a bit before they buy off of some sponsored product campaigns, and it's not getting enough credit. So multi-touch analytics, where you can change your attribution from last touch to, let's say, equal weight or first touch. What it does is it identifies areas where last touch may not be doing justice or hiding something that you're not seeing, right? So we call it multi-touch analytics. So that's the third piece. And there's a couple more. Incrementality analytics, where you're trying to figure out is my ad spend driving incremental sales? A simple use case. Today in sponsored products, you do not know new to brand metrics for sponsored product campaigns. You only get them for sponsored brand and sponsored display. In AMC, you can run new to brand metrics for sponsored products also.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's another, you can do that and then just put it to use. And incrementality is a complex topic. There's a whole bunch of other additional things you could do. So that's one. And I think the last one is, we call it customer analytics. That's where you could get to truly starting to understand like customer lifetime value. In the absence of AMC, there's some reports in Seller Central that can help you get there, but there's hardly anything on the vendor side to do that. But I think AMC is a pathway to getting a bit more sophisticated around your customer analytics.
Definitely. And that covers the organic aspect as well. We're not just talking about paid touch points.
Yeah, so there is a good question. There is so you'll have to pay and get a subscription to this, where you get all of the organic data as well. So all of the ad stuff is, I shouldn't use the word free. Today it costs you nothing, but you only get access if you're doing DSP as of today. But I fully expect that to change in the future. But to get all of the organic and a complete picture, you have to pay an additional pay a fee to get access to that data set also.
Okay. So with AMC then, so it's available then, because we spoke earlier, didn't we, about it's available if you're doing DSP, but it sounds like it is available to, but it comes at, there is a fee in terms of it not being almost, it's not part of just because you're a seller or you sell on Amazon that you get access to AMC, for example.
Well, yeah, just so that we're clear, AMC access doesn't cost you anything. I think Amazon has been careful about how they hand out access, right? So typically, if you're running DSP today, you can speak to your rep and get AMC access. But even when they do that, they want you to use it. So they're curious, like, do you actually have the skills on the team to run SQL and whatnot? So they, their recommendation is, hey, work with partners like Intentwise, because like we do have the skill and we can actually help you use it. But if you have the skills on the team, and if you've got DSP spend, you can just go get access to AMC. But that's today, Rahul. I fully believe that sometime next year, everyone potentially can get access to AMC, even if you're just running sponsored products. But that's the current state today. And when I say paid subscription, by default, you get all this ad specific data. And if you want like organic included, there's another data set that you pay for. And that's how you get access to the full organic view as well.
And you mentioned there about sort of Intentwise. I'm guessing that, I mean, just by what you're talking about in terms of the amount of data and being able to take that and use that and refine that.
Yeah.
You've got to have a certain skill set, an ability to do that. And so I'm guessing that it's almost like you're going to want to deal with, I mean, I know as a business, you'd want to deal with a service provider that has expertise.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a choice, right? So service providers like us, we have a whole bunch of people that can write SQL. We're also taking a different, we are building layers on top. For example, let's take path to conversion view, right? We actually pull path to conversion data, like you can almost treat it like a report. So you don't have to deal with the SQLs and all of that. So we are building a layer on top of AMC where if you may not have to worry about SQL and how to write it. That's one piece. The other piece is like we're also, we want to train people on SQL. So I would simply say, if you don't have the skills today, yes, work with a provider like us. If it is something you want to commit to longer term, just invest in learning and development. I think the single biggest skill that could be super valuable is learning SQL. But if someone on the team knows SQL, you can go pretty far in terms of what you want to extract. Because here's the other thing I keep clarifying every time I have AMC conversations. Thinking about AMC as another reporting and dashboarding tool is a mistake. That's not what it is. Okay. Yeah, you can build a report and dashboard because that is what you want to present to a client and for simplicity's sake, and I get that. But that's not the end all, right? Think of AMC as this massive data set open to exploration. And the more questions and more interesting questions you have, the more interesting the insight is going to be. So you almost have to have this ad hoc analysis mindset and a support for it. And which is why I keep saying, the best thing you can do to your careers right now or your business is go learn SQL. It's not complicated. We are helping, if you go to resources on Intentwise website, there's a link called SQL training. You can follow that. We have set it all up where you can watch and type and learn whatnot. But the best thing you can do as a business or an agency, commit to getting good at SQL because that's the current interface. And I think that'll remain the interface no matter how beautiful all these dashboards and third parties provide. Because if you want to go answer questions that you have that are unique to you, knowing SQL is the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really great in terms of clarifying it between a dashboard, because I think there is that mentality, especially within the agency space, just being an agency. Oh, we can provide this to the client and this will be a dashboard and this is what we can share with them on a monthly basis. But there's certain data that is a must on a monthly basis, but you just rightly put it in terms of ad hoc reporting. And that's what we say. You know, you can't sometimes put a specific cadence on certain reports or anything, because it is as and when that data is needed, you'll then look at it.
Yeah. I mean, think of like you're in a conversation with a client. Yes, I'm sure you're sharing a cost, spend, revenue, daily, weekly, monthly, and that's your PowerPoint or a portal, right? But imagine engaging in a strategic conversation with that client, the CMO or the CEO, saying, let's go figure out your customer lifetime value.
Yep.
And let's make sure that that guides what targets you want to set. Let's go figure out how much of this is truly incremental. To have that strategic conversation, a slide on a PowerPoint, a chart on a PowerPoint is not going to help you.
No.
You need the ability to go after a data set, which, by the way, already exists, and Amazon wants you to use it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I again, I want to reiterate that my take is, yes, I think reports and dashboards are going to be valuable to some parts of this. But if you don't build the muscle to go do some ad hoc exploration, you're going to leave a lot on the table.
Yeah, definitely. And we already see that with other sets of data that Amazon have provided, such as brand analytics and that. Some of it's basic, and I know they've taken some away. But even that, there's fundamental things that you could do there, but you're not necessarily going to use that data every month. It's more when you're doing some product development, you might want to understand basket analysis. You to start analyzing basket size and comparison, what other customers, all of that, which helps with product development. But it comes at a time, as you say, when you're thinking about customer lifetime value, or you're building your strategy for 2023 and et cetera, and that data's there.
Yeah, and look, Karina, you are an agency, right? So I'll go out on a limb and basically say the future of agencies is not about just running campaigns. And by the way, a lot of it will continue to get automated, whether that's done by platforms like us or Amazon, will continue to get automated. I believe the role of agencies is to be the analytics-driven strategy arm for the brand. And by the way, the day-to-day doing and running of campaigns is the tactical thing that needs to get done. But I think agencies, in my view, will have to be or are going to be analytics-driven strategy companies for your clients. That's the future. And if you're not playing that, I think it's going to be difficult.
Definitely. And with the increasing competition, the market just getting saturated, the cost of advertising forever increasing. So you've got to be, all of those reasons. So this is absolutely awesome. I've found our conversation today really interesting. And actually at the start of the conversation, I thought, right, this is going to, there's going to be elements I might not understand, but you've really simplified how your explanations of the tools and the data that's really helped me understand. So I'm sure our listeners today will really have a good understanding. I always have one last question at the end for our guests, and I'm guessing I might know the answer to this one, but I'm still going to ask it. Is if you were to give a tip to anyone that's about to go into, let's assume they've got access and start using AMC, what would that one tip be?
There's a few. The tip really is go look at the instructional queries. Even based on titles, there's about 5 that will stand out for you. Start there, run the queries, and look at that output, right? That's the first thing I would do. So in my mind, like if, sponsored product and sponsored display overlap report, path to conversion, there's about 3 to 5. And when you read the titles of those queries, they'll stand out for you. I would just start there and then build from there on, right? So that would be my tip. And honestly, to just don't be overwhelmed by SQL. It's not complicated. Whether you take a LinkedIn course or Coursera course or come to Intentwise in our website, just commit to getting good at SQL. Just do it.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I'm even tempted. I do love data, and I can get lost in data, and then next minute, you've lost the whole day in data.
True.
But it is incredible as to what you can really find out. So thank you so much. And for those listeners today that have been listening to you and I guess want to know more, what's the best way in which they can get hold of you, to reach out to you or your team at Intentwise?
Yeah, I mean, just go to intentwise.com. Obviously, we offer products, so you could just follow through. Like Karina mentioned at the start, we have two solutions. We have an ad optimization platform, which is fundamentally built on the Intentwise Analytics Cloud. And that solution, agencies use it, brands use it, whether it's just for collecting their own data and basic dashboarding to more complex things. But yeah, just go to our website, and then you can always find me on LinkedIn, Srinath Reddy at Intentwise. And yeah, I'm there as well. Just message me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Srinath Reddy, today. Really enjoyed talking with you, as I say, and just understanding more about AMC and just overall in terms of the data. It is crazy. And I bet if we have a conversation in a year's time, or if we meet face to face at Prosper, I'm sure conversations will be very different, and I'm excited to see how AMC will evolve. And thank you for listening today. And for those that need any support with your Amazon business, eCommerce Nurse is there to help sellers and vendors in many ways through account management, consulting, and project management. And we're there to help you. And also from a data perspective as well, start helping you build out those strategies and really looking into that data. So thank you once again.
Well, no, thanks for having me. This has been great.